The latest tech.
I'm Alexa. I can answer your questions.
Interviews.
And we are evolving, and we are seeing an amazing opportunity that's happening.
Accessibility.
Accessibility is one of our core values. It's even a part of our mission statement.
This is Double Tap TV.
Welcome to another week and another edition of Double Tap TV. This is an exciting week for us here on Double Tap TV because we're taking the show on the virtual road across the globe to Samsung HQ in Korea. You guys watching at home are going to get a rare glimpse behind the walls of probably the biggest electronics manufacturer in the world. But before we dive in, if you want to get involved, email us, feedback@ami.ca. On Twitter, we are at Double Tap Canada, and of course now on Instagram at doubletap.online. I am Mark Aflalo, alongside me each and every single week, Stephen Scott. Happy to have you, Stephen. Tell us a little bit about Samsung as a company. This is not something new.
No, it's not a new company. It's actually been around for a very long time. And the interesting thing about Samsung is, I always try to think how I would define Samsung. You know, what specific product would I think about, and what would I associate with the brand Samsung? And I have to say, more recently, it's been in white goods, or grey goods, actually, in the case of Samsung, because they tend to always be grey. And I'm talking about fridge freezers. I'm talking about washing machines, dryers. You know, all those kind of products. Then, of course, as we move along, TV, they get into that space quite early on as well. And in fact, Samsung actually make a lot of the technology that goes into even iPhones, which might surprise a lot of people. It's not just that they make products with their own badge on it. They make product that they sell to other manufacturers as well, including Apple. So that's quite interesting. You obviously have the TV range, and we've talked about Samsung TV before and the wonderful accessibility it has. And now, of course, the phones is another area where Samsung moved into and uses Android software with its own additional features. And it's done a huge amount of work there as well to try and make their technology more accessible to more of us, which is fantastic news. And now they're into computing, seeing the new Galaxy Book range recently dropping and, you know, getting into that world. And of course, again, Samsung have been in all these areas for a long time, but really starting to solidify their offering and make it clear to the consumer what it is they're buying and really put their name at the heart of it.
You know, you talked about Samsung being parts of other different manufacturers. I mean, they are at the heart of their company an electronics manufacturer. They make the chips that we find in probably every single one of our devices. They make, you know, the screens that we see on virtually every single television, minus the ones that, you know, make their own. You know, they are the panel manufacturer for Apple's iPhones. And recently, you know, even the iPad. So we see Samsung and Samsung products live and breathe in virtually everything that we look at, everything we get our hands on tech-wise. I remember a couple years ago when there was, you know, issues between Apple and Samsung, patent infringement. Even though there was, you know, lawsuits going on back and forth, Apple was still buying stuff from Samsung Electronics Corporation, chips it needed for the phones. So while everybody might, you know, try to take their, you know, claim their stake in different parts of the business and their intellectual property and who owns the copyright to what, they're all buying from each other at the end of the day, right? So it feeds the industry. And Samsung has been there, I mean, probably as far back as Sony, if you come to think about it.
Well, that's right, yeah. I mean, exactly another perfect example of that. And it used to be the case where you'd maybe go into a store and I remember looking at all the TVs on display. And I remember someone explaining to me that Samsung were, you know, one manufacturer that actually made the displays for a number of TVs. And I remember thinking, so really you're just buying a Samsung TV with a different badge on it. So which Samsung TV did you like? Did you like the LG Samsung, or did you like the Sony Samsung? You know, which one did you go for? And that's the thing. And again, that's why it makes it very difficult to define Samsung, because they've got their finger in so many different pies. But like I say, they're very keen to push their own brand these days and their own technologies as well. But interestingly, more recently, they've even started working more closely with companies like Google to develop their mobile platform. And more recently, even on the watch, we're seeing changes there, where Samsung making the move away from their own Tizen operating system and working with Google to try and bring its operating system in line with Wear OS. So you're really starting to see how Samsung try and infiltrate themselves with other companies, but also want to stand alone in that market as well. It's very clever.
You touched on accessibility earlier on. We were talking about the strides that Samsung has made as a company. The reason we're heading out to Korea today, and you joining us for the ride, is because we're going to be talking to a couple of individuals who are in charge of accessibility. One of which who is the accessibility lead at the entire corporation, and the other one is a UX designer, a user interface designer, which is a very, very key role when it comes to designing accessibility in their products. What has your experience been when it comes to accessibility at Samsung? I get the feeling that they were later to the game, which is why the iPhone got a couple steps ahead of Samsung when it came to mobile devices.
Well, that's right. And when it came to accessibility, we tend to look to the source. So I would look to Google or I would look to Apple as the developers of essentially the two leading operating systems that are out there at the moment. Yes, I know there are others out there, but ultimately it's Google versus Apple, right? So, I've always looked to them, but Samsung came along in their own way, developing, as a number of manufacturers did, their own versions of Android. So they would take Android and they would maybe put their own overlay on it or their own skin on it, and they would develop it to suit themselves. Now, in the accessibility field, Samsung were the only ones to do this with accessibility as well. So Samsung developed their own screen reader much later than Google's TalkBack, but it was developed out of TalkBack and based on user feedback. And this was intended to be a much smoother, much easier experience for blind people in particular. Just thinking about their screen reader itself, there were other accessibility functions in there. So, you really started to see that divergence coming. However, they've now switched direction on that. They're now actually assisting Google in developing TalkBack on the Android side further. So the work that Samsung is doing is actually having an impact on all Android phones, which is a really positive step. Again, it's late to the game, but in some ways that's helpful because they come with a new perspective, they come with new ideas, and ultimately it benefits all of us.
Stephen, let me set the scene a bit because we're going to be going to Korea. Obviously, we're going to be talking to a couple of people who do not speak English. So we're going to be doing this via a way of a translator. So the voices that you hear will not be the actual voices of the people that are talking. Instead, we're going to play you back, obviously, the English version of what they are talking about. So let's take a quick break and put our virtual wings on when we do that during the break and head to Korea. Join us, will you? This is Double Tap TV. We'll be back in just a moment.
For more great Double Tap TV content, visit ami.ca/doubletap. This is Double Tap TV.
Welcome back to Double Tap TV. We are extremely excited to be able to bring you this show this week. If you've got any feedback, please do reach out to us. Email feedback@ami.ca. Of course, on Twitter, you can reach out at Double Tap Canada. And now on Instagram, you can follow us there too. It's at doubletap.online.
Now, Mark, we speak to a lot of different companies on this show, but this week we are reaching far beyond. We are taking our show to Korea, virtually, of course, to the headquarters of this tech giant. Now, this company has been pioneering in the electronics space since 1938, when it was founded. Today, the company is worth $211 billion and continues to produce some of the most cutting-edge technology and the components that cutting-edge technology uses.
Welcoming to the program, Kang Don-hyun and Moon Hee-kyung. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Tell us a little bit about yourselves first and how you landed at Samsung Electronics.
I started with usability testing for mobile accessibility in 2011 and have been involved in the mobile accessibility field for 10 years, spanning accessibility planning to user experience UX design, and most recently with accessibility project management.
So you've clearly been at this a while. It's quite obvious across the Samsung lineup that the company is committed to accessibility across the product line. When did accessibility become a priority to Samsung?
Our interest in accessibility started to grow when the transition from feature phones to smartphones began to take place. Unlike feature phones, it wasn't possible to tactually identify the keypad or control buttons on smartphones, so the company delved deep to come up with ways to address this problem. Moreover, the 2010 enaction of the 21st Century Communications and Video Accessibility Act in the U.S. pushed us to strengthen mobile accessibility in line with the specific standards and guidelines laid out by the law. That's when I began my career in accessibility, by joining the task force following the CVAA enactment. We did a lot of research and listened to many users to meet the requirements under the CVAA, which enabled us to shape the accessibility features on our mobile devices.
So when it comes to focusing on accessibility, across a wide range of disabilities, how do you go about deciding what to prioritize?
There's no set answer to this question. As the world's biggest smartphone maker, Samsung is committed to satisfying the needs and requirements of as many users as possible. Rather than limiting the accessibility features for the disabled, we feel it could be helpful to address difficulties for all. Recently, Samsung has been collaborating with Google to offer the best accessibility on mobile devices, and we plan on developing new features together or integrating different features.
Do you work with the blind and disabled community to get feedback on accessibility features?
At Samsung, we value listening to feedback on usability from diverse consumers. For example, we've been running the Samsung Supporters Program for a long time, where we receive feedback from users with disabilities who use the accessibility features on Galaxy. This allows us to incorporate their feedback to improve functionality and product design.
As our UX designers explained, we've been collating consumer feedback through the Samsung Supporters Program. In the future, we plan to communicate with even more people and reflect their feedback to enhance features. In addition, every year when we roll out new products, we receive feedback and consulting from disabled communities. Furthermore, when there are any additions or updates with functionalities, we carry out separate user testing and research to take in feedback on those developments. For example, Samsung collaborated with Google to integrate Voice Assistant and TalkBack. Both companies conducted user testing to draw out roadmaps based on feedback and work together to make improvements.
So at what point in the development of a new product do you start looking at accessibility of that product?
To enable everyone to enjoy our products without any compromises, we consider accessibility in every feature, movement, and UX design at the very early stages of product planning.
At Samsung, we adhere to a set of firm guidelines to take accessibility into account as early as the planning stage of each mobile device. We conduct various internal and external testing to improve usability for product development, and continue to monitor and improve the product's accessibility based on feedback from the Samsung members community in various user tests even after the launch.
Can you tell us about the new accessibility features in the new Samsung S21 range of smartphones?
I would like to introduce a feature called Recommended for You. There are numerous features on a smartphone which make it hard to pinpoint which ones are useful for you. Recommended for You is a feature found in the accessibility setting of the Galaxy S21 series, which recommends accessibility features that are useful for different user scenarios and provides useful tips.
I would like to talk about TalkBack, which is a feature that reads the text on the screen for the visually impaired. Google and Samsung have been working together to create the best accessibility features on mobile devices.
When TalkBack is on, it provides spoken feedback so that you can use your device without looking at the screen. TalkBack is intended for situations or people who have difficulty seeing the screen. How to use TalkBack: swipe right or left to move between items. Double tap to activate an item. Drag 2 fingers to scroll. How to turn off TalkBack: volume keys. Press and hold both volume keys for a few seconds. Settings. Tap the Use TalkBack switch. You'll see a green outline. Double tap the switch. On the confirmation message, tap Stop, then double tap Stop in list 4 items.
The first project under this collaboration was to combine Samsung's Voice Assistant and Google's TalkBack features. To integrate two similar features and maximize the advantages, we maintained Samsung's multi-finger gesture and shortcut functions while providing diverse setting options from Google's TalkBack. As a result, a new version of TalkBack was boarded on the new Galaxy S21 line, so people with blindness or trouble seeing their display can navigate their phone as if they were provided with an additional screen reader. Samsung and Google will continue to collaborate to ensure that Galaxy smartphones are easy to use by people of all abilities.
If you're just joining us, we're in conversation with Kang Dong-hyun and Moon Hee-kyung, who are in charge of accessibility at Samsung. Now, we've got more of these guys lined up, so hang on. When we come back, we're going to talk about some other products, such as TVs and smartwatches. This is Double Tap TV. He is Stephen Scott. I am Marco Flalo. We'll be back in just a moment.
Love Double Tap TV? Listen to AMI Audio for Double Tap Canada every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern for news and reviews on everything tech. This is Double Tap TV.
Back on this very special edition of Double Tap TV, a very special episode because we are going all the way to Korea and the home of the mothership, Samsung Electronics Corporation. I am Marco Flalo with Stephen Scott by my side, and we're in conversation with Kang Dong-hyun and Moon Hee-kyung, who are in charge of accessibility at Samsung, Stephen.
Yeah, Mark, we talked about accessibility in general at the company, but what about specific product lines, like, for example, televisions or smartwatches?
We are trying to bring in the same user experiences provided on smartphones to Galaxy watches. Of course, considering the small screen and hardware, it won't be possible to offer all of the features of a smartphone on the watch, but we are exploring ways to maximize the usability of wearables that you always carry and to deliver a seamless user experience.
Guys, how are you using new technology like AI to develop accessibility features? For example, your smart assistant, Bixby.
We will bring new experiences to consumers with the integration of artificial intelligence technology. For example, we have Bixby Vision, which integrates the smartphone camera and AI technology. Through this technology, we offer Scene Describer, where AI analyzes the screen captured by the smartphone camera and explains in voice. Then the Quick Reader allows text photographed to be verbally read, and the color detector informs the color of the subject to be photographed. The Quick Reader, in particular, can identify more than 1,000 objects, making a very useful tool for those with poor eyesight. We will continue to develop more features leveraging AI technology.
Do you find that more users are embracing Samsung products because, they are more and more accessible?
The current generation is interested in corporate social responsibility more than ever, which influences consumers' purchasing decisions. Samsung listens to what consumers want, not limited to accessibility, and reflect their needs in our product features and functionalities. We are committed to fulfill our roles and responsibilities in society through technological innovation. By empowering people to do more, we believe more users will embrace Samsung products and services.
So here's a question for you guys. What's getting you excited about the future of tech for people with disabilities?
Digital inequality has become one of many new social issues with the rapid advancement of technology. This change brings more difficulties for the disabled to adopt, and if the corporate world doesn't make the effort to care about the issue, the polarization of the society could get worse. Our role is to make sure that people are not left out or isolated amidst these changes, and to provide the technology that will allow all people to enjoy the benefits equally. We look forward to the day when technological innovations will be available to all users, regardless of disabilities. That's when people like us working on accessibility are no longer needed.
Okay, cheeky question here. Are there any areas at work behind the scenes at Samsung that you think could help push accessibility further?
Technology can progress through the process of resolving any inconvenience people are faced with, and going further, even before people realize. Samsung strives to better understand people, contribute to society, and improve accessibility features, which is an important pillar in our efforts towards this direction. We believe that we can push our accessibility technology further when more people share feedback on our features. Samsung will continue to develop technology that is accessible to everyone.
Thank you guys so much for welcoming us to Korea, virtually, of course. Mark, it's been quite a ride this week.
It has. Thank you guys. Thank Kang Dong-hyun and Moon-hee Kyung from Samsung Electronics in Korea. What an opportunity, Stephen. We do a lot on the show. We try our hardest to get some really good companies involved. And it's not always about the names, It's not about getting a CEO of this company or this person who people might be aware of. I love how we dig deeper into these corporations and try to get to the heart of some of these innovations like accessibility.
Well, that's right. And when you think about accessibility, it is generally a few guys in a room, working away. They're not front and center of the company. So we really do have to dig in with companies. And it's great that Samsung have been so open with us this week.
Yeah, I try to think about our list, my bucket list of people to talk about accessibility. We've talked to Google, we've talked to Apple, we've talked to Microsoft, we've talked to Amazon, now Samsung. Is there anybody left?
No. That's it. We're done. We can leave. That's
okay.
it.
We're done. Thank you guys so much for being here. On behalf of Stephen Scott, and special thanks to Kang Dong-hyun and Moon-hee Kyung from Samsung. Again, on behalf of Stephen Scott, I am Mark Aflalo. If you guys want to get in touch, it's feedback@ami.ca. Of course, on Twitter, we are @DoubleTapCanada. Use that hashtag, which is AskDoubleTap. And we'll see you on Instagram, @DoubleTap.online. Thanks for being here. We'll speak to you again next week.
For more great Double Tap TV content, visit ami.ca/doubletap. Hosted by Mark Aflalo and Stephen Scott. Editing, Will Latar. Production assistants, Wendy Kaufman. Content review, Zachary Aflalo. Social media, Andy Wynn. Segment producer, Sean Priest. Voiceover, Anna Vicino. Integrated Described Video Specialist, Ron Rickford. Coordinating producer, Jennifer Johnson. Director, Production, Kara Nye. Director, Programming, Brian Perdue. VP Content Development and Programming, John Melville. President and CEO, David Arrington. Copyright 2021, Accessible Media, Inc.